The Xerion research vessel Emerald Tides drifted through the void like a seed pod caught in a cosmic current, its smooth biomechanical hull pulsing with faint yellow-green luminescence. The ship's architecture was alive, veins of photosynthetic energy webs threading through its structure, feeding off starlight, breathing in the dark. Commander Xerion stood at the observation deck, his emerald-scaled fingers resting against the organic glass. Beyond, the derelict human vessel hung in the silence of space, a relic of an era long past. Its design was brutal in its simplicity, angular, unyielding, forged from cold metals that had no pulse, no breath. A dead thing, Arsik, the lead xenobiologist, approached, his bioluminescent crest flickering with restrained excitement. The scans confirm it. Commander Therese, a functioning cryopod aboard, a human, still alive. Xerion's secondary eyelids flicked sideways in contemplation. The humans had been extinct for centuries, wiped out in the Great Purge when the galactic consensus deemed them too volatile, too dangerous to coexist with the elder species. Their wars had been legendary in their ferocity, their refusal to surrender even when outmatched. And now, here was one of them, sleeping in the dark, waiting. "Wake it," Xerion ordered. The cryopod hissed as its seals broke, venting centuries of preserved atmosphere into the Emerald Tides' sterile containment chamber. Frost curled away like dying breath, revealing the figure inside, a human male, clad in the remnants of a black military uniform, his face eerily untouched by time. Corporal Nathan Carter opened his eyes. Arsik leaned forward, fascinated. The human's pupils contracted, adjusting to the light with unsettling speed. His gaze locked onto the Xerion scientist, and for the first time in his life, Arsik felt the weight of a predator's attention. "Where am I?" Carter's voice was rough, unused, but there was no disorientation in it, only calculation. Xerion stepped forward, his crest flaring in a display of authority. "You are aboard a Xerion research vessel. Your ship was found adrift. You have been in stasis for a long time." Carter's fingers twitched. Arsik noted the way his muscles tensed, the way his breathing remained controlled. This was not a being waking from centuries of sleep. This was a soldier assessing a battlefield. Then Carter did something unexpected. It wasn't a friendly expression. It was the baring of teeth, the silent warning of something that had survived against all odds and knew exactly how to do it again. Arsik's bioluminescence dimmed in instinctive unease. The human sat up, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off a brief nap rather than centuries of frozen slumber. His eyes flicked across the room, the organic walls, the pulsing energy veins, the alien faces watching him. "You're not the ones who put me under," Carter said. It wasn't a question. Xerion hesitated. "No, the humans who did are long gone." Carter exhaled, slow and deliberate. Then he stood. The containment field should have stopped him. It was designed to restrain creatures 10 times stronger than a baseline human. But Carter moved through it like it was nothing, his body humming with a latent energy that made the Xerion's photosynthetic cells recoil. Arsik's datapad chimed a frantic warning. His frills stiffened in alarm. "Commander, his readings, his cells, they're not degrading. They're enhancing. The cryostasis didn't preserve him. It evolved him." Carter tilted his head, listening. Then he chuckled. "You really shouldn't have woken me up." And in that moment, Xerion understood too late why the ancients had feared humanity. They didn't just survive, they adapted. The Xerion command spire pulsed with the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of living architecture, its walls threaded with veins of yellow-green bioluminescence. The air tasted of ozone and something older, something that hummed beneath the skin like a warning. Xerion stood before the High Council, his frills pressed tight against his skull in deference. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of organic amber and emerald latticework, its ceiling lost in a haze of photosynthetic mist. The counselors loomed above him on their elevated platforms, their elongated forms wreathed in the shifting glow of energy webs. "You woke it," Counselor Velis said, her voice a whisper of rustling leaves. "Against protocol." Xerwin's secondary eyelids flickered. "We believed it was inert. A relic." A ripple passed through the council, their bioluminescence flaring in agitation. The air thickened with the scent of warning pheromones. "You believed," echoed Counselor Draxon, his voice dripping with disdain. "And now we have a predator loose in our halls." Xerwin resisted the urge to bare his teeth. "It is contained." "Is it?" Velis leaned forward, her frills flaring wide. "Your own scientists reported anomalies. The human cells, they are not merely preserved, they are changing." Ersic shifted beside him, his data pad clutched tight. The readings had been clear. Carter's muscle density, neural activity, metabolic rate, all of it was accelerating, adapting in real time to stimuli the Xerions couldn't even perceive. "It's possible the cryostasis altered him," Ersic admitted. "Human biology is unpredictable." Draxon scoffed, the sound like dry bark cracking. Unpredictable, a polite word for abomination. Xerwin's claws flexed. He had seen the way Carter moved, fluid, effortless, as if the containment field were nothing more than a suggestion. The human hadn't even seemed aware of the restraints. And then there was the way he had looked at them, like he was measuring the distance to their throats. "We should terminate it," Draxon declared, "before it becomes a problem." Velis hissed. "And if it resists? If it fights back?" The chamber fell silent. Xerwin exhaled slowly. "We don't know what it's capable of." Draxon's frills stiffened. "It is one human. From a dead empire, what threat could it possibly?" The alarms tore through the spire like a scream. The bioluminescent veins in the walls flared crimson. Ersic's data pad shrieked with overlapping warnings. Breach signatures, energy spikes, movement where there should have been none. Xerwin was already moving when the comms crackled to life. "Commander," a subordinate's voice, ragged with panic. "The human, it's gone." And then, from somewhere deep in the spire's arteries, the lights began to die. One by one, like something was coming. The spire had never known darkness. For centuries, its veins had pulsed with the steady glow of photosynthetic energy, bathing every corridor in an emerald haze. The Xerion had built their strongholds as living things, breathing, shifting, responding to the needs of their masters. But now, something was wrong. The lights didn't just dim. Xerwin felt it before he saw it. The unnatural chill creeping through the organic metal beneath his feet. The air grew thick, heavy, as if the spire itself was holding its breath. His frills flared, tasting the scent of ozone and something else. Something sharp, metallic. Ersic's claws tightened around his data pad, the screen flickering with corrupted glyphs. The containment chamber, it's not just empty. The restraints were severed, not broken, cut. Draxon snarled, his bioluminescent markings flaring in agitation. "Impossible." The bindings were reinforced with, "Does it matter?" Velis hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's loose, and it's hunting." The words hung in the air like a blade. Xerwin forced himself to move, his talons clicking against the living floor as he strode toward the command nexus. The spire's defenses should have activated the moment the human escaped. Autonomous sentry drones, neural stasis fields, bioelectric barriers. But the systems were silent, not silent. Ahead, the corridor curved into shadow, the last of the walls, luminescence guttering like a dying star. Xerwin's secondary eyelids flicked down, adjusting to the gloom. His pulse hammered in his throat. Then, movement. A flicker at the edge of his vision. Too fast, too fluid. Nothing like the deliberate grace of Xerion warriors. He spun, his sidearm humming to life in his grip, casting a sickly yellow-green glow over the walls. But the air smelled like blood behind him. Draxon let out a choked gasp. Xerwin whirled, just in time to see the alien's body crumple. His frills splayed wide in shock. A dark shape blurred past him, vanishing into the shadows before he could even register the strike. Draxon hit the floor. His throat was gone. Valis staggered back, her voice a strangled whisper. What? Ursic's datapad clattered to the ground. Its screen shattered. The scientist wasn't looking at it. He was staring at the ceiling. Xerwin followed his gaze and saw him. The human clung to the arched ribs of the corridor like some grotesque fusion of predator and machine. His fingers hooked into the living metal as if it were nothing. His eyes, those eyes, locked onto Xerwin's with a focus that was almost reverent. Then he dropped. Xerwin fired. The energy bolt seared through the space where the human had been, but he was already gone, rolling into a crouch with a speed that defied biology. The human's hand flashed out, something glinting in the half-light. Ursic screamed. The scientist collapsed, his leg buckling beneath him as dark ichor sprayed across the floor. The human hadn't used a weapon. Head used a shard of the broken restraints. Valis lunged, her talons slashing, but the human twisted, his body bending in ways that shouldn't have been possible. He caught her wrist, pulled, and Valis' momentum carried her straight into the wall with a sickening crunch. Xerwin fired again, and again. The human danced between the shots. No, not danced, calculated. Every movement was precise, efficient, as if he had mapped the entire battle before it even began. Xerwin's frills flattened against his skull. This wasn't panic. This wasn't desperation. This was execution. The human's foot hooked behind Xerwin's knee. The world tilted. Pain exploded through his skull as he hit the floor, his weapon skittering out of reach. Above him, the human loomed, his breath steady, his face eerily calm. Then, a sound, distant, mechanical. The human's head snapped toward the noise. Ursic, bleeding but alive, had triggered the emergency lockdown. Somewhere deep in the spire's core, the ancient protocols stirred. Bulkheads hissed shut. Defense drones whirred to life. The human hesitated. For the first time, Xerwin saw something flicker in those cold, dark eyes. Assessment. Then, with a final glance at the wounded Xerion, the human turned and vanished into the spire's arteries like smoke. Valis groaned, dragging herself upright. Ursic's breath came in ragged, wet gasps. Draxon's body lay still, his frills already dulling in death. Xerwin stared at the empty corridor. The alarms still wailed, the lights still flickered, and somewhere in the depths of their own fortress, the human was still moving, still hunting. Xerwin exhaled. They had made a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. The spire groaned around them, its living architecture shuddering as if recoiling from the violence that had just unfolded. Xerwin's frills pressed flat against his skull, his pulse thundering in his secondary veins. The air smelled of scorched bio, fibers and something metallic, human blood, perhaps. Though he couldn't be sure, Ursic was still alive. Barely. The scientist's carapace had cracked under the force of the human's strike, amber ichor seeping through the fractures in his exoskeleton. His breathing was labored, each inhalation a wet, clicking rasp. Valis, though wounded, had already activated the emergency containment protocols, her talons trembling as she interfaced with the spire's neural web. The alarms pulsed in time with the structure's bioluminescent veins, casting the corridor in erratic flashes of yellow-green. Shadows stretched and twisted, making every vine, like conduit and pulsing energy node, seem alive with menace. Xerwin's mind raced. They had woken the human expecting a relic, a fragile, half-dead thing to be studied, catalogued, and discarded. Instead, they had unleashed something else entirely. The human had moved like liquid violence. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Every strike had been calculated, brutal, efficient, and now it was loose in their fortress, a predator stalking the labyrinth of organic corridors and shifting bulkheads. Ursic coughed, his voice a broken whisper. It wasn't just strength, it was adaptation. Xerwin turned. Ursic's mandibles twitched, struggling to form words. The cryo-stasis. It didn't degrade him. It refined him, his cells. They've been in a state of forced evolution, millennia of suspended animation. But his body, it kept adapting, preparing. A cold knot tightened in Xerwin's thorax. They had not awoken a relic. They had awoken a weapon. Deep within the spires, arterial passages, the human moved. Corporal Nathan Carter did not run. He flowed. His body remembered war. The corridors were alien, twisting, organic, pulsing with bioluminescence. But the principles of combat were universal. Choke points, blind corners, kill zones. His mind mapped them instinctively, his enhanced senses drinking in every detail. The air currents shifted ahead, movement, defense drones. Likely he paused, pressing against a rib-like support strut. His fingers flexed, testing the grip of the stolen Xerion sidearm. The weapon was strange, its grip molded for alien physiology, but it would serve ahead. The corridor branched. The left path thrummed with energy, likely a hub. The right was darker, quieter, a trap, or an opportunity. He didn't hesitate. The command nexus was in chaos. Xerion officers scrambled between glowing control nodes. Their frills flared in alarm. The spire's neural web was alive with reports, security breaches, failed containment locks, entire sections going dark. Commander Janet Weir watched from her containment pod, her face unreadable. The Xerion had sealed her in a translucent biochamber after the humans' escape. Its walls thrumming with restraining energy. She could see them, their agitation, their fear. It was almost amusing. They had thought themselves the superior force. They had been wrong. A flicker of movement caught her eye. One of the younger Xerion, Drex, she thought his name was whispering frantically to another officer. His frills were trembling. Let them tremble. Xerwin stood before the central hololith, watching as the spire's security grid updated in real time. Red markers flared, breaches, then vanished. The human wasn't just evading their defenses. He was dismantling them. Valus limped to his side, her voice tight. We need to purge the sector, flood the corridors with neurotoxin. Xerwin's frills twitched. And kill our own. We're already dying, she hissed. He exhaled, mandibles grinding. The human had been awake for less than an hour, and already the storm was gathering. Section Fe, the Admiral's Law. The air in the command spire tasted of ozone and fear. Xerwin's claws flexed against the hololith's control interface, his emerald luminescence flickering in agitation. The human Carter was moving through the lower sectors like a shadow given teeth. Every security measure they activated crumbled moments later, as if the very architecture of the spire recognized him as its rightful master. Ursic's voice crackled through the comms, her usually melodic tones strained. He's bypassed the containment fields in Sector 9. The neural inhibitors, they don't affect him. Xerwin's frills flattened against his skull. Impossible. The inhibitors were designed to overload any organic nervous system, triggering synaptic collapse within seconds. Even the hardiest of the galactic species crumpled beneath them. And yet the human moved, unhindered, deep within the spire's underbelly. Carter exhaled, his breath fogged in the cold air, his body thrumming with an energy he hadn't felt in centuries. The cryo-sleep should have left him weak, sluggish. Instead, his veins burned. The Xerion's attempts to stop him were almost laughable. Their bioelectric barriers sizzled against his skin, then fizzled out, their living architecture recoiling from his touch, as if recognizing something ancient, something predatory. A squad of Xerion enforcers rounded the corner ahead, their carapace armor glistening under the pulsing amber light. Their weapons hummed. Photosynthetic energy coils. Charging. Carter didn't slow. The first shot grazed his shoulder, searing flesh, then stopped. The wound knit itself shut before the enforcers could fire again. Their frills flared in alarm. Commander Weir watched the carnage unfold through the security feeds. Her lips curled. The Xerion had woken something they didn't understand. Centuries of cryo, sleep hadn't weakened Carter's body. It had refined it. His cells had adapted, his nervous system rewiring itself in the frozen dark. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was evolution given form. Ersic stumbled back from her console, her bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. His DNA, it's mutating in real time. The cryogenics didn't preserve him, they accelerated him. Weir's smile sharpened. The Admiral's law had always been clear, never wake the old ones. The Xerion had ignored it. Now they would learn why. Zerwin's hololith exploded with fresh alerts. Sector 12, overrun. The human wasn't just escaping, he was hunting. Valus gripped his arm, her claws digging into his flesh. We need to call for reinforcements, the entire fleet. No, Zerwin's voice was hollow. He had seen the data. Humanity's warships were already moving, and they weren't coming to negotiate. Carter reached the hangar bay. The last of the enforcers lay broken behind him, their bioluminescence fading into the dark. A single dropship hummed before him, its organic metal hull shuddering as its systems recognized his presence. The Xerion had thought themselves the masters of living technology, but human machines had always remembered their makers. The cockpit hissed open. Carter stepped inside. The storm was just beginning. The Xerion High Conclave had gathered in the heart of their bioluminescent citadel, its walls pulsing with the slow, rhythmic glow of photosynthetic energy. The chamber was a cathedral of living architecture, vines of organic metal coiled around support beams, their emerald veins thrumming with power. The air smelled of ozone and something deeper, something alive. The scent of their technology breathing in unison. They had dismissed the warnings. Now, they would pay for it. Zerwin stood before them, his carapace still smeared with the residue of battle. The High Elders loomed above him on their elevated platforms, their elongated limbs twitching with agitation, their faceted eyes reflecting the sickly yellow-green light of the chamber. You let this happen, hissed Elder Vathis, his voice a whisper of grinding chitin. A single human, one relic of a dead age, and now a holographic projection flickered to life between them, displaying the devastation in real time. Sector 12, a sprawling Xerion research hub, was now a graveyard of shattered biostructures, their once gleaming organic towers reduced to blackened husks. Sector 7's defense grid had been bypassed, its living turrets torn apart from within, their neural networks overloaded by something older than their own technology. And then there was the human Nathan Carter, moved like a specter through the wreckage, his movements too precise, too fluid. The cryo-sleep had not weakened him, it had refined him. His muscles remembered war in a way the Xerion could not comprehend. His mind had been forged in an era where humanity fought not for dominance, but for survival, and survival had made them ruthless. Ersic, the lead xenobiologist, stepped forward, his mandibles clicking in distress. His neural activity, it's beyond baseline human parameters. The cryostasis didn't preserve him, it enhanced him. Zerwin's claws flexed. How? Ersic hesitated. We don't know, but his body is adapting, learning. Every system we throw at him, he understands within minutes. Hes not just fighting us, Hes studying us. The chamber fell silent. Then, from the shadows, Elder Xyrith spoke, his voice dripping with venom. Then we erase him, burn the station, purge the sector. No relic is worth this. Zerwin's spine stiffened. And if he survives? The hologram flickered again. This time, it showed the human warships, dozens of them. Not the sleek, predatory vessels of the modern human fleets. No, these were ancient things, pulled from the depths of forgotten dry docks. Their hulls were scarred from wars the Xerion had never fought. Their weapons were crude by galactic standards, but they carried something far more dangerous than firepower. They carried memory. The humans had not forgotten their past. And now, neither would the Xerion. Carter's fingers danced across the dropship's controls. The Xerion had built their machines to be alive, to think, to adapt. But human machines had been built to obey. The ship's systems recognized him, not as an intruder, as command. The engines roared to life, their organic metal veins glowing crimson as they overrode the Xerion's safety protocols. A voice crackled over the comms. Commander Weir to Corporal Carter status. Carter didn't smile, but something in his chest, something old and cold and familiar, stirred. Ready to come home, Mom. The dropship surged forward. The storm had only just begun. The Xerion command spire pulsed with alarm, its bioluminescent veins flaring a sickly yellow-green as the first human dropship tore free from its docking cradle. Zerwind watched from the observation blister, his chitinous fingers tightening around the railing. The organic metal groaned under his grip, its living fibers protesting. He had seen human defiance before, reckless charges, desperate last stands, but this was different. This was calculated. The dropship's engines burned crimson, a violent contrast against the Xerion's photosynthetic glow. It moved with a precision that should have been impossible. Their systems were alive, designed to resist intrusion, to adapt. Yet the human had bypassed them like a surgeon cutting through dead flesh. Ursek's voice crackled through the neural link. His usual calm fractured. High Commander, the human vessel is... I see it, Zerwind hissed. The dropship wasn't just escaping, it was hunting. Carter's hands were steady. The Xerion had built their ships like living things, breathing, shifting, reacting. Human ships were different. They were tools, and tools had no will of their own. The targeting array flickered to life, painting the nearest Xerion interceptor in jagged red crosshairs. The alien craft shimmered, its hull woven from biometallic fibers that flexed like muscle. But Carter had flown through the debris fields of Proxima. He had danced with death in the corpse, strewn orbits of dead colonies. This was nothing. His thumb pressed down. The railgun fired. The interceptor didn't explode. It unraveled. The hypervelocity slug punched through its organic armor like a bullet through wet paper, shearing through the ship's pulsing energy veins. The Xerion vessel convulsed, its bioluminescence flaring once, bright panicked, before guttering out. Its wings tore apart, the living metal screaming as it was ripped into the void. Zerwin's mandibles twitched. Humans weren't supposed to understand Xerion technology. They weren't supposed to use it yet. Here they were, turning it against them. Commander Weir's voice cut through the static. Carter, status? He didn't answer immediately. His eyes were locked on the tactical display. More interceptors were peeling away from the spire, their hulls shimmering as they adapted to his attack patterns. Let them come. Making progress, he finally said. The dropship banked hard, its thrusters flaring as it swung toward the next target. Ursek's lab was in chaos. The containment pod, the one that had held the human for centuries, stood empty, its cryogenic fluids still dripping onto the floor. The monitors flickered with corrupted data, their organic circuits rejecting the Xerion's attempts to regain control. Ursek's tendrils trembled. He had studied the human. He had run the simulations. He had been wrong. The human wasn't weakened by time. He had been sharpened by it. The second interceptor died screaming. Carter's ship twisted through the debris of the first, its engines flaring as it closed the distance. The Xerion pilot tried to evade, its vessel flexing like a living thing. But Carter had already anticipated the move. The plasma lance fired. A beam of white-hot fury sliced through the interceptor's core, boiling its organic systems into vapor. The ship came apart in a burst of emerald fire, its remains scattering like leaves in a storm. Carter didn't celebrate. He adjusted course. The spire was next. Xerion's claws dug into the command console. This wasn't happening. The humans were supposed to be broken. They were supposed to be relics, clinging to the scraps of a dead empire. But the dropship kept coming, and the wolves were howling again. Section. Fae. No sanctuary. The spire loomed ahead, its towering form pulsing with sickly yellow-green light. It was not a structure built. It had grown, its architecture twisting like the gnarled roots of some ancient tree, veins of bioluminescent energy threading through its surface. The command center of the Xerion forces, the heart of their operations in this sector, and Carter was coming for it. His dropship streaked through the debris field, engines roaring as they burned through the last of their fuel reserves. Behind him, the wreckage of 2 interceptors still glowed, molten fragments cooling in the void. The Xerion fleet scrambled to respond, their living ships flexing and writhing as they reoriented, but they were too late. They had underestimated him. They had thought him a relic, a ghost of a dead war. They were wrong inside the spire. Xerion watched the approaching vessel with mounting horror. The human ship was damaged, its hull scorched and bleeding atmosphere, but it refused to die. It moved with a predator's precision, slipping between the defensive fire like a blade through water. Ursek's voice crackled over the comms. The scientist's usual calm shattered into static, laced panic. High Commander, the human's neural patterns, they're not degrading. The cryostasis didn't weaken him. Xerion silenced the transmission with a swipe of his claws. He didn't need the scientist's frantic theories. He could see the truth unfolding before him. The human wasn't just surviving, he was adapting. Carter's fingers danced across the controls. The dropship system screamed at him, structural integrity failing, weapons overheating, life support flickering. He ignored them all. His focus was absolute. The spire's defenses opened up, tendrils of living metal unfurling like the limbs of some deep-sea predator, each one tipped with crackling plasma emitters. The air around the ship shimmered as energy lances lashed out, seeking to tear him apart. He let them come. At the last possible second, he triggered the emergency thrusters, sending the dropship into a brutal spin. The plasma streams grazed the hull, searing through armor but missing the core systems. The ship shuddered, alarms wailing, but Carter was already countering, his hands moving faster than thought. He had fought in wars these aliens had only read about. He had survived battles that had broken empires, and now they would learn why humanity had once been feared. The spire's outer shields flared as the dropship rammed through them. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the organic structure, the living architecture recoiling as if in pain. Carter's ship carved a molten trench through the outer layers, its hull screaming in protest before finally coming to rest, embedded deep within the enemy's heart. The emergency hatch blew open with a concussive thump, and Carter stepped out, rifle in hand. The air inside the spire was thick with the scent of ozone and something else. Something organic, cloying, like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed around him, veins of emerald energy throbbing in time with some unseen heartbeat. Ahead, Xerion soldiers scrambled into position, their armored forms sleek and insectoid, their weapons humming to life. Carter didn't stop walking. He raised his rifle, and the spire learned what it meant to face a wolf that had been starving for centuries. Xerion watched the carnage unfold on the command displays. The human moved like something out of legend, a specter of war, untouchable, unstoppable. His shots never missed. His reflexes were beyond anything the Xerion had ever recorded. And he was getting closer. Ursek's voice returned, this time raw with disbelief. His body, it's not just surviving the stasis, it's enhanced by it. The neural pathways have rewired themselves. The muscle density, the reaction times. Xerion didn't respond. He didn't need to. The human was coming, and there was no sanctuary left. The command spire trembled. Not from weapons fire, not from structural failure, but from the footsteps of a single man. Corporal Nathan Carter moved through the halls like a force of nature, his rifle barking in precise, measured bursts. Each shot found its mark. Xerion soldiers crumpled before they could even raise their weapons, their bioluminescent armor flickering out like dying embers. The air smelled of scorched organic alloy and something metallic, something human. The scent of old blood, of war waged too long. Xerwin watched it all unfold on the pulsing command displays, his mandibles tightening in a gesture that, in another species, might have been called dread. The human was not just surviving, he was evolving. Ursik's voice crackled through the comms again. Frantic now, the usual measured cadence of Xerion's speech shattered. His neural activity, it's accelerating. The cryostasis didn't just preserve him, it refined him. Like steel tempered in the void. Xerwin didn't answer. His gaze remained locked on the displays, where the human moved with a predator's grace, his every motion a lesson in efficiency. He didn't waste bullets, he didn't waste movement. He simply was. An inevitability, a storm-given flesh. And he was coming. Commander Janet Weir stood in the heart of the Xerion command nexus, her hands bound by living restraints that pulsed with yellow-green energy. Around her, the Xerion command staff worked in silence, their movements quick, their voices hushed. They had thought her a prisoner. They were wrong. She had let them take her because she had seen the data feeds. She had watched Carter move, and she knew, long before the Xerion did, what was coming. Ursik turned to her now, his faceted eyes reflecting the glow of the holographic displays. Your soldier, he is not natural. Weir smiled. It was not a kind expression. No, she agreed. He's human. The doors to the command chamber exploded inward, not from explosives, not from energy weapons. From a single kick, Carter stepped through the wreckage, his rifle leveled, his eyes scanning the room with the cold precision of a machine. His armor was scorched, his face streaked with blood that was not his own. Xerwin rose from his command throne, his carapace plates shifting in what might have been defiance. You are one man, he hissed. Carter's finger tightened on the trigger. That's all we ever needed to be. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, Xerwin lowered himself back into his seat. His mandibles flexed once, twice, a gesture of surrender. Terms, he said. Weir stepped forward, her restraints falling away as the Xerion systems recognized the shift in power. First, she said, you will never wake another human without permission. Xerwin's gaze flicked to Carter, to the way he stood. Utterly still, utterly lethal. Understood, the Xerion commander said, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy learned the true meaning of fear. The Xerion command chamber hummed with the subdued pulse of dying energy. The air smelled of scorched biometal and the faint, acrid tang of spilled blood. Commander Janet Weir stood motionless in the center of the room, her boots planted firmly on the organic lattice of the deck. Her gaze locked onto Xerwin's alien face. His emerald carapace, once gleaming with the authority of a conqueror, now seemed dull, diminished. Behind her, Corporal Nathan Carter remained a silent sentinel, his rifle still raised, his stance unyielding. His armor bore the scars of battle, the blackened streaks of plasma burns, and the deep gouges where Xerion claws had scraped against reinforced plating. His breathing was steady, controlled. He did not blink. Ursik, the Xerion scientist, had retreated to the far wall, his bioluminescent veins flickering erratically, a sign of distress among his kind. His tendril-like fingers twitched as he processed the impossible. A single human soldier had done what entire fleets had failed to accomplish. Weir exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of centuries pressing against her lungs. She had been asleep when the war began. She had been asleep when the Xerion had carved their empire from the bones of lesser species, and now, awake, she found herself standing in the wreckage of their arrogance, "Second," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade, "you will return every human relic, every piece of our technology you've stolen." Xerwin's mandibles flexed, his yellow-green eyes narrowing. "You do not understand what you ask," he rasped. "Your kind's machines are unstable, dangerous." A flicker of amusement passed through Weir's expression. "Yes, that's why you wanted them." Ersic made a sound, a choked, clicking noise. "The cryo chamber," he said, his voice trembling. "It did not preserve you, it changed you." Carter's finger twitched against the trigger. Weir didn't turn. She already knew. The cold sleep had not merely suspended them, it had refined them. Their cells had adapted, their neural pathways sharpened by centuries of forced hibernation. The Xerion had thought they were reviving relics. Instead, they had awoken something far worse. "Third," Weir continued, stepping closer to Xerwin, "you will deliver a message to your High Synod." The Xerion commander tensed. "Tell them Admiral Weir's law still stands." A ripple passed through the chamber. The name meant nothing to the Xerion, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. Xerwin hesitated. "And if they refuse?" Weir smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then well, remind them." Outside, the void of space stretched endlessly, the stars watching in silent witness. The Xerion flagship, once a beacon of unstoppable dominion, now drifted like a wounded beast, its organic hull pulsing weakly with fading energy. Somewhere in the dark, the humans were waiting, and this time, they would not sleep. The Xerion flagship's command chamber hummed with the low, erratic pulse of failing bioenergy. The air smelled of scorched organic circuits, and something else. Something the Xerion had never encountered before. Fear. Xerwin's mandibles twitched as he processed the human's words. Admiral Weir's law, the phrase was meaningless to him. Yet the way the humans spoke it carried the weight of an ancient oath, something carved into their history with blood and fire. Across the chamber, the human soldiers stood motionless, their armor still slick with the remnants of Xerion biofluid. Their visors were dark, but Xerwin could feel their gazes, calculating, patient, like predators waiting for the first sign of weakness. One of his sub-commanders, Xeris, dared to speak. "High Commander, we must." Xerwin silenced him with a gesture. He had seen the data streams from the human ship. He had watched as their weapons systems the Xerion had dismissed as crude, unfolded like a nightmare. Plasma lances that burned through living armor as if it were paper. Railgun salvos that shattered entire bio-fleets in seconds. And the boarding drones, those things that moved like shadows, dismantling his warriors from the inside out. But worse than the weapons was the silence. The humans fought without taunts, without the ritualized challenges of honorable combat. They simply acted, with a precision that spoke of centuries of war distilled into instinct. Xerwin turned back to Weir. The human admiral hadn't moved. His stance was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes, those were the eyes of something that had seen empires rise and fall. "You will let us leave," Xerwin said, testing the boundaries of this fragile truce. Weir tilted his head slightly, as if amused. For now, a shudder ran through the chamber. The word was not a promise, it was a countdown. Outside, the void remained still, the human fleet. What little of it the Xerion sensors could detect, hovered just beyond engagement range, their ships dark, their energy signatures muted. Waiting, Xerwin understood. Then, this was not a retreat. This was not even a warning. This was mercy. And the most terrifying thing of all, he had no idea what the humans considered justice.